Hello, everyone, and welcome to Zoom into Books. We've got award-winning author Deb Brandon with us today. She's going to be talking with you about her two books. So take it away, Deb.
Hello. I am an author. I'm a mother, a college professor emeritus. I just retired, which is fun. A textile artist and a brain injury survivor. Let's see, in the aftermath of the brain injury, I wrote two books. Let's see, oops. I wrote two books. My memoir, But My Brain Had Other Ideas, which is a story of my recovery from brain injury. And the other one is Threads Around the World, from Arabian weaving to batik in Zimbabwe. I know they seem, they don't seem to go together, but actually the story behind these books, there is a fluid connection there. I have in my brain the clusters of malformed blood vessels, scattered throughout, and two of them bled, which resulted in a lot of interesting losses, and it really changed my life very dramatically. Before I start, I'll read you my prologue to the book. I was hallucinating from the anesthesia, but I didn't recognize the hallucinations for what they were. I had no frame of reference, nothing to give me direction. There was no light at the end of the tunnel, since there was no end to the tunnel. There was no tunnel. I remembered being a kid at the beach, tumbling around in the waves, not knowing which way was up, not knowing when I'd be able to take my next breath of air. I felt the same disorientation now. When I was a kid, I trusted the waves to toss me onto the shore before it was too late, even though their play was a little too rough at times. It was like playing chicken. The fear was delicious, and I went back for more. There was nothing delicious about this fear. So from this excerpt, there was a bit of a spoiler there, that after the bleeds, I ended up having brain surgeries. What happened was the only known treatment to prevent future bleeds from these kind of tangles, it's a hereditary disease. The only known treatment is brain surgery. Once you bleed, there's a higher chance of bleeding again. And as I said, in the wake of all this, my life turned upside down. And I ended up with a bunch of deficits. Common ones for all brain injury survivors are issues with memory, attention span, maybe think a bit slower, things like that. So I have all that stuff going for me. One of my deficits is I have issues processing high volumes of input. So when the input overwhelms my ability to process it, I end up with traffic jams in my mind, and things become exciting. Things happen, and think about it, let me read you another excerpt to give you an idea of what it's like. This is the first time it happened to me, and I had no idea what was going on. I had been diagnosed a few months earlier with cavernous angiomas, but that wasn't when all hell broke loose. So the first inkling that something was going very wrong was what I'm going to read about here. Let's see. I need to get out of here, but how? Where? My eyes are pricking with tears. I can't cry, not in front of everyone. It's so crowded, so many bright colors, so much motion. They're too loud, they're too close. I have to get out. I feel raw, in pain. My eyes dart around the room. Where's the door? Why can't I find it? I know it's here somewhere. It's got to be in that direction. Or is it that way? Think, think. Why can't I think? What's happening to me? What's wrong with me? The crowd surrounding me is a roiling, boiling, blurry mass. I can't see past them. They're moving too fast. It's too noisy. I can't focus. I can't single out individual faces. I can't pick out individual voices. I need to get out. I don't know what to do. I need help. I scour my surroundings, trying to slow the world down, trying to make sense of it, trying to find an anchor, something to ground me. I need to find help, but I can't focus sufficiently to seek it out myself. I need help to come to me. I need someone to notice me, to realize that I'm in distress. But who? Everyone's so busy. No one will notice. Of my closer friends, the two who would truly understand, Linda and Cheryl, were feeling hemmed in earlier and probably got out of here already. I would have got out as well if Debbie hadn't snagged me. Debbie, wait! Her voice, I can hear it. I can distinguish her voice from within the cacophony. My anchor. Oh yes, Debbie had wanted to thank me for the bracelet, but then someone interrupted us. And as I waited for them to finish talking, the world came crashing down around me, ensnaring me, trapping me deep within a nightmare. I knew that I needed to leave, but something prevented me from doing so. What was it? Oh yes, Debbie had been holding my hand. I couldn't let go. It would have been rude. And by the time I realized that rudeness was the least of my worries, I didn't know how to let go. I feel her hand warm in mine. I hear a voice still talking to who? The world slows down somewhat, but it's still a blur and I can't make out distinct shapes. I try to turn my head to look at Debbie and whoever she's talking to. I can't move. Why can't I move? What's going on? But I can move my eyes. They continue to dart around, frantically searching for an escape, for help. I feel Debbie's grasp loosen. No, no, don't let go. I'll plummet into the abyss. I manage to squeeze it imperceptibly, trying to hold on. She squeezes back, and her hold becomes firmer again. The tension inside me eases up a touch. I bought myself some time. I've got to get help before she lets go. I search within my field of vision, but there are no individuals in the blurry chaos around me. I let my eyes sweep across the crowd again and again, seeking a familiar face, hoping. I don't have much left in me to keep me from tumbling over the edge. I'm having trouble hanging on to Debbie's hand. It's slipping from my grasp. I'm beginning to have trouble feeling it. Just as the tears are about to spill over, Cindy's face appears out of the blur. I feel some of the tension leave me. She's moving closer. I sigh. I know that I have enough strength to hold on until she reaches me. Right when Debbie releases my hand, Cindy arrives by my side and puts her arm around my shoulder. I'm safe. So that, according to my neuropsychologist, I'm one of the worst cases he's seen, whatever that means. And to me, it seems, it gets horrific. You panic, and everything that happens with a severe panic attack happens to me. I've just stood there bawling, having an incredible meltdown. I freeze, I can't move, I can't talk. But, you know, happens, right? You know, it's part of the package. And ultimately, actually, I don't have regrets about what happened. Not that I'd want to repeat the experience, but I can't say I'd want to undo it. My life is a lot fuller now. I've changed. I've become more me, more authentic version of myself. I have more passion, more compassion. I became a much better teacher, but since I'm emeritus now, it's a bit irrelevant. Maybe not. I came to write through the injury. You know, ended up writing my memoir. I really don't have any regrets. I mean, I love the brain injury has actually opened up an entire world for me. It's, you know, I think in terms of, I used to think in pastels, now I think in radiant colors. So what happened after the surgeries, I felt very, very lost. And Oh, sorry. I felt lost. I felt as if I'd been thrown into a completely alien landscape without a compass. I felt completely disoriented. I felt completely disconnected, not just from the world around me, but from myself. I felt as if there was something, this malevolent entity who'd taken over for me. I felt like I didn't fit inside myself. And I knew that I needed to move forward, but I didn't know where to start. And I did have some idea. I'd been in inpatient rehab, so I knew I needed a neuropsychologist, I needed a physical therapist and various other things. But I needed more. I needed to know the story from the inside. I needed stories from people who'd gone through it. And I poured through the internet, I poured through books, but I really didn't find what I needed. I found books written by doctors and nurses. That wasn't what worked for me. I found some written by caregivers, but I needed stories from the inside. And I did find a couple from maybe 3, I don't know, from brain injury survivors. And they seem to focus on the trauma and acute recovery. And some, I found some that focused on religion, on issues with health insurance, that kind of thing. And again, that wasn't what I wanted. So I decided to start writing my own. I didn't think of it in terms of a book or a journal. I just decided to write my own, whatever, manuscript. And hopefully, as I bumbled along, it would help me sort things out and figure out which direction to go in. At first, I did it in terms of, well, at first I'm babbling. That happens when you have a brain injury. Lose track of things. So sorry. At first, okay, gonna look at my notes. So, oh yes, at first I wrote it more for myself to understand what was going on. And then because a lot of the issues are invisible, I wanted other people to know what I was going through. You know, people I loved, people I connected with. And so, the way I wrote it, people told me how well I write, that kind of thing, although I didn't quite believe them. And then the more, as time went on, I encountered more people. Well, I encountered doctors, medical personnel who were ignorant about a lot of issues. Issues like the psychology behind it, like some of the, even my neuropsychologist, who not only is a psychologist, but has, knows a lot about, the neurology of it. Even he was surprised at some of the things I mentioned to him. So there's a lot that's not known there, that the only way to find out is from inside stories. But then, so I decided I wanted to reach a broader audience, not just medical personnel, but also the public at large. I mean, everyone, we have all at some point encountered something to do with brain injury, whether you know it or not. Whether it's that you've sat next to someone who'd had a concussion in the classroom, or you met someone who met someone, that there's concussions abound. I believe the percentage of people with brain injury in the I think it's 15 or 20%, something along those lines. As I said, I was a college professor, and in class I used to talk about this as a way to tell people tell the students not to chat too much because I couldn't deal with the sensory input. but then I gave them a rule that, because that didn't work too well, I gave them a rule that they can chat as long as they don't use any S's, and that really cut back on it. But anyway, so that, as I said, I go off on tangents. Let's see, lost my train of thought again. Oh, yeah, so I wanted to reach a broader audience, and I realized that my writing wasn't good enough. No matter how much praise I got, I just knew it wasn't good enough. It read more, now that I thought about it, read more like a journal. I couldn't attend workshops because of the brain injury. So I ended up employing a writing coach, who's now not only my writing coach, but, well, she's become a good friend, and she's my editor. So good friend / writing coach / editor. I think that works. Probably doesn't cut well. In some ways, she's also a therapist, because if you write memoir, especially about topics like this, it's good for the soul. Okay, so I ended up writing this book. I mean, my writing coach, Judy Fort Brenneman, she's an amazing teacher. I mean, she transformed me from a journal writer to an author of an award-winning book. But so there's that side of it. But the thing is, as I was learning to write, as I was morphing into a storyteller, other things started happening to me. Writing became a passion in itself. It wasn't just goal-oriented. It's not that I wanted to publish this book. It was much more than that. I became a writer. I wanted to write. And before the surgeries, I think, let me see, 2003, the surgery. So a few years before the surgeries, I started writing a column about textile techniques from around the world. This is another passion of mine. As I said, I'm a textile artist. When it comes to ethnic textiles, I'm a rabid fan, probably covers it. And I started writing these articles, and after I'd written about 50, someone suggested that I put together a collection and publish it. What started out being a collection after the brain surgeries, and after I became better versed in writing, I started putting it in form of a book. Well, I started putting the pieces together and rewriting and reworking. I was a much better writer, much more of a storyteller. And in fact, when I first started writing the articles, they were very technique oriented. And now, as a storyteller, I became much more interested in the stories behind the techniques, the traditions, the communities, the textile artisans themselves. And the result is my second book, which is also an award-winning book. So, as I said, I am an ethnic textile nut. I mean, I come by it honestly. My parents were ethnic textile lovers. They you know, our house I was always surrounded by ethnic textiles. And through the writing the textiles, it was this feedback loop that as I'm writing, I absolutely love the research. So interesting. And a lot of fun too. I mean, you meet interesting people, you read fantastic books. Many of the books you see behind me are textile books. Many of them, the excuse was the book that I wrote. The rest I started collecting earlier, and stuff since is because I'm a nut. Things happen. You know, I'm not a nut because of the brain injuries. I'm a nut because I've always been a nut. Just to clear that up. So Let's see. Storytelling in general is inherent in textiles. And textile traditions connect us not only between past and present, but they also create ties with each other. There's no them. There's only us. I mean, if you think about it, first of all, on the surface, we all wear clothes, or well, the vast majority of us wear clothes. I'm sure there's some out there who just don't, period. But I don't personally know anyone. So there's that connection. Seems silly, but then there's, fashion, taste, people like different things, and you can, there are all sorts of, for instance, now with social media, there are various groups for lots of different, aspects of fashion or whatnot. My daughter just started one about nail polish. But in general, so what happens? But not at a deeper level. There's also this business of the stories behind the textiles, the stories about the traditions. There's a lot that connects us with that. And when the stories about the artisans, you realize that they're not just these quaint beings who produce these beautiful things. They're people just like you and me. For instance, if you look at the background textile on the book cover, it's Moroccan, and this is a close-up of it. This Moroccan, it's called a Moroccan flat weave, and unlike the rugs you see that have tufts, these don't have them except for the little bits there, but that's an anomaly. Well, that's unique to this particular group with their textiles. But these are rugs that aren't knotted pile rugs. Now, the story behind this is fascinating. And in fact, this is my favorite chapter in the book because of the story behind it. So what happened was, first of all, there was the story behind the person who brought these to sell to the US. She's a friend of mine. She started a co-op amongst the Berber in the Atlas Mountains in Morocco. And this is one of the things that she sold. And well, actually, she gave that to me as a birthday present. But now going deeper, let's go back to the artisans. The Moroccan weavers, well, the Berber weavers, it's the women. The women are the ones who do the weaving. The act of weaving is a metaphor for the life cycle of a son in their society, in their community. Now, when I weave, I'm a weaver, when I weave and I I finish it and cut it off the loom, I feel like I'm freeing it out into the world. I'm giving birth to it in some sense. Well, when I started learning about the Moroccan weaving, I learned that when they cut it off the loom, it dies. And I was horrified. I mean, no, I'm not surrounded by dead textiles. I don't wear dead textiles. So I started looking further into it, and I found out more about the whole life cycle thing. One thing, when they're setting up the loom, when they're building the frame, that's analogous to giving birth to the male child. When they set it up for weaving, they put the yarn, they warp the loom. That process is the process of a male child becoming an adult. So the way things go, this is like in Islam, until a certain age, a male child is male only by gender, physically. They become a male as a full-fledged member of men, the men in the community, when he grows up, and then he gets a soul. He becomes a man in all senses of the word, and that's circumcision amongst the Muslim, that kind of thing. Now, so still, okay, and then the life cycle, while you're weaving, that's going through the boy's or the man's his journey through life. And when there's any kind of mishap in the weaving, like a broken thread or a delay in the weaving, that kind of thing, that's analogous to something that, an obstacle in the sun's journey. And when you cut it off the loom, when you finish it, the textile dies as the man dies. The interesting thing there is that when they cut the textile off the loom, they perform last rites as they would to a man. So this was all, I was fascinated, but I loved learning this. But still, the textile dies? No, that's still not okay. And then I talked to a Muslim friend of mine, because it suddenly occurred to me, maybe death in Islam, and I should have remembered that because of the various versions and all that. Death to Islam is not the end. There's an afterlife. And what happens with the textiles, for instance, with the rug, once it goes into the house it was intended, it could be as a gift, or the weavers themselves, made it for themselves. When it goes into the house for use, it becomes reborn. So that whole story was just fascinating to me. And this whole idea, when you think about it, from the story about the life cycle of a male person, I was going to say male man, male person in a society, that's a universal, because, well, in particular, in their case, it's a male-dominated society, and when the boy grows into a man, it's when he leaves the sphere of the woman's influence, and he becomes part of a world that that has nothing to do with the women's world. So there's a lot of story there that really unifies us. The story of, your male child, of giving, of, having a child, see them grow up. A lot of the stories are like this. A lot of the symbols are often, a lot of symbols in weaving are in indigenous weaving are to do with oh God, what's the word? God, I can't think of the word. Well, actually genitalia, but it's to do with, but it's to do with procreation. There we go. Oh God, I've got to get over this brain injury one of these days. Okay, the next photo. So this is actually the picture I show most people when I see people in person, and I want to, tell them how wonderful the book is. That's the first picture I show them. The reason behind this, and you see, as I said, there's a story behind all the things in the book, right? Including this picture. So this is a chapter about Scottish kilt hose. And we were taking the photographer, Joe Coker, an award-winning photographer, actually, also an award-winning author, amazing guy, really lovely guy. So we were taking photos of the textiles, and we went to take photos of the kilt hose, and we looked at them, and we look at each other and we go, they look like dead fish. So he suggested putting a pair of legs inside them, and I happen to have a pair. So those are my legs. There's actually another photo of my legs that's under Spanish espadrille, but I think those are, as you can see, we started getting silly. There's some even more interesting poses that I did, but anyway. Another story. So some of the stories, a lot of the stories are not just about the artisans. They're about what, again, us, them, and us and them really meaning us. So some of them, so all the stories that come out of this book are, as I said, there's a lot of universal stuff here. This is called Japanese fish printing. I don't know how to pronounce it, Gyotaku, I don't know. Originated in China. The idea is, there are various theories about it. People, after, or maybe it was Japan, oh, I don't know. God, brain injuries. There are various ways of doing this, but they're made from real fish. So there's to record the catch, and actually there's also well, there's a tradition in there about celebrity drowning, and it comes into that. There's a whole story behind it. My story there is when my daughter was 8 or 9 years old. When she was young, we used to do a lot of crafts together, and we went to learn how to do fish printing. And it was funny because to do it, you have your fish, and one of the methods, you have your fish, you have to pin the fins, the fins, I don't know, out, so they're spread out. You have to remove all the fluids and various things like that. Now, my daughter is very squeamish, whereas I kind of enjoyed the slime. So it was clear who was going to do it, and I had a blast, and she looked away. Another amazing, I thought was a fantastic thing, when you do this, if you think about it, so how does it work? You paint the fish in whatever you want to paint it, and then you lay the cloth or the paper over it and press down on it. Now, if you think about what would happen when it comes to the eye, you're going to get an eye socket. You're not going to get the actual eye. So the eye is the thing you put in at the end. Now, and so you paint an eyeball, and it's an amazing thing to see when you put that little white dot, suddenly the fish comes alive. And that's referred to as returning the spirit to the fish. And if you just try it, just think of it in terms of you're drawing an eye or a person with eyes, usually a good thing, or some animal with eyes, and then just add that little dot in white, and it just changes the whole thing. Let's see, what else do we have here? Oh, here's another fabulous story. This piece is made of silk. It was made on a very primitive loom. It was made in Bhutan by a friend of mine who was, so first of all, when it comes to that piece, if you go into the traditions, the stories of the community, they're fascinating. I mean, for instance, property goes through goes through the female. The females are the ones who inherit the property. The males are more into they're the educated. They do they're into the religious side of the community. Clearly now with globalization, it's not quite as set, but it's still very much there. Bhutan has an incredible, this is from Bhutan, as I said, it's got an incredible textile tradition, and they're still, you know, they often wear traditional clothing, so it's very much part of it, part of life there. I met these two as a mother and daughter weavers at a weaving conference, and got talking to them. And we became friends, good friends. In fact, when I was going in for the brain surgeries, they lit butter lamps at the temple for me. And I met them a couple of months before the surgeries, and that's when I got this piece. So the story behind this piece is really interesting. Leki, the mother, she was a weaver to the king. Well, I think it's not this king or the previous one. I think it's the grandfather. I'm not sure, I don't remember. You could read about it in the book. So the story behind that is fascinating. So she made this thing as a tea towel, as a hand towel for the king. Now think about it. This piece is silk with these intricate, God knows how long it took her to do it. I mean, I know it's certainly not measured in weeks, probably months. And she wove this as a hand towel to the king. I can't imagine a king wiping his dirty hands on that, let alone me. Needless to say, I don't use it as a tea towel. This is one of the pieces I cherish. In fact, it's one of my favorite pieces. So you can just the stories, as I said, they unify us. Another fun story here. This is a three-dimensional embroidery from Peru. The makers, I know the weaver and the embroiderer. They're from Ayacucho, Peru. This is three-dimensional embroidery. This is something that died down, this technique of the three-dimensional embroidery. It's from pre-Inca days. Now, one of the things this family does, the Ansabais, they research old textile techniques and they bring them back. And this is one of they learned this by researching and peering at a piece that was that they found in a museum. How did I meet them? I met them at a meeting, at a conference, and I have a terrible habit. So if I'm around people who understand what goes into making these things, I have absolutely no shame. Very often you have, in these kind of conferences, you have people who come from abroad, like Vilma and Nino, and they come. Vilma is the embroiderer. Saturnino is the dyer. Another family, he's the weaver, and another family member is the dyer. Very often they underprice, and I forget what they were selling these for. Each one was like no more than $20, possibly $15. And I said, I'm sorry, I'm not willing to pay that. And he thought I was bargaining with him. And I said, no, this is worth more than whatever it was. He was ready to, yeah, that's right. They were asking 20. And I said, no, I'm not willing to pay that. He said, okay, 10. And I went, no, at least 40, if not 50, you know. And it's funny because friends of mine who went there, they said, you are the one who had them, they raised their prices quite dramatically. What happened was, on their way to our conference, they'd stopped at a church place and they didn't know what prices work, and they couldn't see, the prices that would be fair trade type prices, they couldn't sell these no matter what. So they thought that they had to drop the prices, and they need to make money to go back home. Let's see. Oh, another thing that happened there. Originally, I bought the black one, and then because I loved it, you see the crocodiles, well, actually they're lizards. I thought they were crocodiles, and I loved their toothsome grins. But then they also had ants with their bums hanging up there, you know, out of the cloth. So I had to get one of those. And then the last one, it had been raining and they didn't have any rain clothes. They just had their winter clothes, heavy jackets. And I was wearing an LL Bean raincoat. And Saturnino asked me if I'd be willing to trade it because Vilma really liked it and needed something. So sure, and I traded my coat for one of those, which is certainly well worth the cost of the coat. This thing, the story behind that is actually another fun story. First of all, the story about the tradition here. This is kente cloth. What most people know about is Ashanti kente. This is Ewe kente. And it's just two different tribes in Africa. And this one was made by a guy named Kapuchi Bobo. And I met him in person. Apparently, each of these, so how they're made is they're made in strips, narrow strips. That's how they're woven on, again, a fairly unsophisticated loom. More sophisticated than the one that they wove the beautiful piece on in Bhutan, but less sophisticated than you see here amongst you know, hand weavers here. Certainly less sophisticated than what I have in my living room. And so they weave them in strips, and then they join them together. Now the pattern is there's a story behind the pattern. Now in the Ashanti kente, each symbol has a story, means something. Here it's the overall thing. I forget what the meaning of this is. In fact, Kapuchi did tell me, but given my memory issues, one of the stories, they have messages. For instance, there's one that a future bridegroom gives to his future bride's family, and it says, the ball is in your court, as in, I'm bringing you something to tell you that I'm interested in your daughter. You're going to be making the next decision, type thing. You know, it's up to you next, or you know, it's a bargaining type message. There's also one that says that's about it's called fences or walls, and it's the idea that, you know, neighbors who have issues will do better if there's a fence between them, things like that. I mean, it's really interesting stories. Another part of this story is now on a more personal level. So I originally met Kapuchi, I don't know, a couple decades ago. And then a few years ago, well, no, it was last year, I went to a meeting, and there he was. I had no idea he was going to be at the meeting. He had no idea that he was in the book. So I showed him the book and gave him a copy. And it was lovely. I mean, he was thrilled, and it was wonderful to see it. And the stories continue, since you know, not only is the book about the stories, the book has given me stories. I mean, it's not just that when a textile goes into its next life, it's to you know, for more stories to be told about it. It's same with this book, that, you know, I thought I wrote the book, end of story. Well, no, it's not. It's not the end of the story. Not only is the story of the journey through publishing, selling to people, making connections with people through it, but there's also stories that come directly from the book. So this meeting where I met Kapuchi, he was there was another woman there, and there was a person showing these kind of textiles. This is called Kanta embroidery, and we see more and more of them, and it's characterized by just a running stitch, so where you take the needle, go in, out, very simple, and they're in parallel, so you get that little textural effect there, and then there are the figures on it. But the characteristic are the wavy texture, like effect. And I met a woman at that meeting, and I was talking to her about this piece, and I was telling her about how it's made and what, the various characteristics and things like that. Now, this woman is from, she's African, Ghana or Nigeria. God, this is awful that I can't remember. Anyway, her name is, I think she's from Ghana. Oh God, that's embarrassing. Her name is Lola. She is a fashion designer. The stuff that she does, she deconstructs clothes and then reconstructs them. She combines pieces, Western pieces with ethnic pieces. For instance, I mean, she's made these don't have one here. These beautiful masks for the pandemic from out of African textiles. So she combines the two. And we were talking about it. I was telling her about this thing, and she said, "Oh, we should collaborate." We really clicked. We should collaborate. And she wanted me to show her, educate her on this form of on this technique, and do some samples for her, and then she was going to use them in her designs. Yeah. So as I said, lots and lots of stories. And the amazing thing about it all is that this is a journey. This whole journey started because of the brain injury in many ways, this whole journey into writing. And it's done, so in many ways, the brain injury has enriched my life beyond anything I could have imagined. And, well, thank you very much.
Deb, we do have a few questions. One question was, it sounds like weaving and writing may be a similar process. Would you agree?
That's an interesting way of looking at it. I could see that. Yes, because, well, the way I weave, certainly, I tend not to be very structured in my work. When I design something, I like a variation in the design to flow from one to the other, and not in a, so, and also when you design what you're going to weave, there's a lot of creativity that comes into it. And one of the things I really love about writing is you start writing, you might think you're writing about one thing. For instance, I was writing about my daughter's first driver's test. And, I was writing it as a story of my daughter's first driver's test. And then I didn't realize that what the story was really about, what was going on behind all this, was about my relationship with her. And once I realized that, the direction of the story took a different direction. And this is one of the beautiful things about writing, that you start one way and then your brain tells you, I want to go this way. And you can resist as much as you want, but your brain will really pull you in the direction it wants to go. And it changes the story, it changes the emphasis. It's an incredible process. And the same with weaving. Well, as I said, the sort of weaving I do, I love to, there's a type of weaving that's called twill. It's like if you look at jeans, there's that diagonal effect going on. So if you use that same kind of pattern, you can turn it into herringbone, which is going in zigzags. You can do all sorts of things with it, or diamonds you can make out of it. And what I like to do is I like to mix those up and make elongated diamonds, and I do that as I weave. And I don't know, when I start, I don't know which way I'm going to go with it. I don't know if I'm just going to do diagonals, maybe, and somewhere along the way I start doing that, and then at some point the story changes. So there's that side of it, that creative side of it, and there's also this part when you write or when you weave. it's very much living in the moment. You are writing what's going on now as you write. I mean, you're focused on what's going on with the scene you're writing on now. It's the same with weaving. You're focusing on what you're weaving at point, but then there's the whole story to look at. So yeah, in many, and there are various other aspects. So I'd say yes, it is very much. And again, okay, so there's that analogy of, you know, freeing the textile into the world to begin, you know, to accumulate more stories. It's the same with the book. That's, you know, you have a story of the book, there's the story in the book, and then there's the story that the book evokes. And the same with weaving. Yes, that's a fantastic way of looking at it. I didn't really think about it like that, those analogies. Thank you.
The creative process is similar on several subjects.
Yes.
Another question that came through, are there support groups that were helpful for you that you could share?
Support groups for the brain surgery stuff?
Yes.
Okay, well, okay, for people who have these clusters of malformed blood vessels, they're referred to as cavernous angiomas. There's in the US, there's the Angioma Alliance, and I believe that that'll be put in. Yeah, it's angiomalliance.org, and then there's a national, well, there are local chapters of Brain Injury Association, I believe is the thing, and then there's a national one. I mean, there are all sorts of them. If you look up on Facebook, if you search for brain injury, or if you have seizures, epilepsy, or if they're non-epileptic, just search for seizures. I mean, seizures are wow, she sells seashells. Seizures are okay, never mind. So it's fairly easy to find them, especially if you look on Facebook. That's a fantastic place to start.
Okay, well, thank you very much. I want to thank everybody that joined us on Facebook for Zoom into Books today. If you'd like to subscribe to our Zoom into Books YouTube channel, please do. It's free. And if you'd like to contact the author, Deb Brandon, her link is posted on the Facebook comment feed. Thank you very much.
And thank you.
See you again soon. Thank you, Deb.
Thanks.